Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went scorched earth on her Republican counterparts, making a series of scathing comments at the crack of dawn Wednesday. She got into the heated exchange over miscarriages. That was during a House Energy and Commerce panel markup. Let's take a look.
Where 25% of your constituents are on Medicaid, 40% of your constituents are on Medicaid. And yes, I am talking.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I am talking to them, and I will not yield because it was a terribly disrespectful comment, and I will not yield to disrespectful men. Thank you very much.
The committee was discussing reforms to Medicaid requirements during a session that lasted past 3 a.m. Their package would allow pregnant or postpartum patients to exempt work requirements while receiving program services. When AOC asked how the changes would affect women who have miscarriages, she was met with this response.
In terms of some of the exemptions, pregnancy is covered, correct?
May I interrupt? I'm glad you're addressing us instead of speaking to the camera.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Pregnancy is covered, correct?
Users on social media came to AOC's defence. Attorney Howard Sklar writing, "We need to come to grips with the fact that she's just plain better at this than a lot of Republicans, and to treat her like the electoral threat that she is."
Others called out AOC's tangent. Rita Cragwell says, "We are the boss, you are out of order, you assume you speak for all, and you do not."
Big win for AOC here, I would argue, Robby, for the very simple reason that she was making a very substantive point. It was a substantive point that might not have got a whole lot of attention had she just asked her question, got an answer, and had that continue. And instead, this Republican Congressman Randy Weber of Texas made a big thing of it by going after her for alleging that she was playing to the cameras. What she was asking for, as you mentioned in the introduction, was clarification on whether women who suffer miscarriages would have to meet work requirements that the Republican Party wishes to impose on Medicaid recipients. That's obviously an important question, a substantive question, and it has now become headline news because the Republican congressman was, in my view, disrespectful, but more to the point, made this whole thing a headline-grabbing issue.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that is basically how it went down. AOC is pretty good at this, and yes, was kind of finding an angle on this issue that works to her political advantage, but there's nothing wrong with that, and it reflects the fact that there is going to be there's clearly skepticism if you look at polling among the electorate, even conservatives, about changes to Medicare and Medicaid that might result in people getting fewer benefits. Now, I am ideologically, to some degree, good with pursuing that anyway, because I think it needs to be done. On the work requirements, people love, some people really are enthusiastic about the idea of work requirements, and I think in an ideal world, I think it's reasonable that, if you're getting government benefits that you have because you don't have enough income or you don't have a job, you should be working toward employment as you still receive those benefits. However, I have become worried about just adding more regulation also to the healthcare system, because then somebody has to verify that you're doing this, so that's a government job we need. There's more paperwork, so that's a government job we need. And on some level, checking in on all these things to make sure people are jumping through all the extra hoops you've imposed to make the welfare more fair or distributed in some way you think is more correct or morally just, actually makes the system more expensive because you need people to verify it, and I don't always love that idea.
So I think here what we have is an argument that you're making somewhat in the abstract. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is cutting against the point that AOC raised, which is if a woman has just suffered a miscarriage and has income levels that would normally entitle her to Medicaid, she shouldn't then be compelled to be working in an injured and presumably traumatic state in order to avail of health coverage. And the whole idea that there should be work requirements, I disagree with on a moral basis, because I'm of the view that the provision of healthcare is in fact a human right. And the United States, as you're well aware, is the only developed nation that does not treat it in that way. And so these arguments that there should be a work requirement for treating someone who's just had a miscarriage seems just callous to me, honestly. And in relation to these specific proposals on Medicaid, it isn't just about people having reduced benefits. According to the CBO, it's about 8.6 million people could not have health insurance at all by 2034. That is an urgent threat. And AOC is rightly making the point about how it could impact people. She listed the high percentages of people in some of those Republican members' districts who are dependent upon Medicaid. These are basic, decent human rights that are at danger of being stripped away.
Yes, I mean, we do on some level have just an ideological disagreement here. I mean, it's fine by me if there are exceptions in these requirements for people who have recently suffered an injury or to get a certain amount of time where you're recovering from an injury or a situation like a miscarriage. If that is an exception to the work requirements, but that I would be happy to support. So no real issue there. I mean, it's, but in terms of it being a moral right, that does just become a philosophical issue. I don't believe you can have a right to something that then someone else would be obligated to provide you. You have a right. It's negative rights versus positive rights, which viewers might know or not know what that means. But I have a right not to be coerced against. I have a right not to be killed or harmed or censored or those kinds of things. Do I have a right, to your, on some level, a right to healthcare would be a right to compel you if you're a doctor to serve me? How can that be a right?
It would simply be the right to have access to health care irrespective of your means, as happens in every other developed country in the world. Big differences there, and we'll see if there are more coming up with a Wisconsin judge who's accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade ICE agents. She has a strong message for prosecutors. Stick around to hear her argument.